Oh, we're getting there. We're figuring this out. We're live. Oh my gosh, we're live again. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted, folks. I'm live and I'm exhausted. We hosted an awesome event last night. We had a whole bunch of people come, and we talked a lot about born out of the idea that my son, who's 17, is about to go to university. We talked about, we had a bunch of experts in the industry talk about RESPs, leveraging your mortgage situation and the opportunity to purchase housing in order to actually make money for your children for when they come out of university. And we had some expert guests that were incredible, including this guy who's uh, Karen. This is our first repeat guest,
Yeah.
which is kind of fun. And I think the reason why that's important is because he was so good last time that, why wouldn't you bring him back?
No
Uh,
pressure, right?
yeah, no pressure. Jivan, thank you for coming. Thank you for showing up at the Q&A today.
Cheers.
So just a little recap because it was so much information, interesting information. And we don't have to dive too deep into it because it was a little bit of a longer presentation that you did, but you know, what you brought to the table last night was awesome because I'd never even put the numbers together this way for myself to think about what to do with my son when he gets into university. Um, and I'll start with the overview, which is essentially purchase a house instead of putting them in the housing that's there and available for you on campus to be able to create a nest egg for your kid. Let's start there. How does that work? Really quick, high level overview.
Sure. No, so a lot of us, when we're thinking of purchasing housing in the areas that our children go to school in, more often than not, people are thinking that they need to buy it under their own name, turn it into an investment property, which obviously has tax implications and income implications, especially if you're in a higher income tax bracket, which you kind of have to be able to do these things.
And
Uh,
down payment implications.
Absolutely. Oh, of course, there's down
Yeah.
payment implications as well. If it's something that you're buying as a true rental versus a second home, that's a very good point because a second home you can buy with as little as 5% down, but an investment, a true investment real estate opportunity, you need a minimum of 20% down, and sometimes more depending on the size of the property. So, first off, thank you so much for the invitation yesterday, and thank you for inviting me back today. Um, as I said to the crowd that was there yesterday, and as I'll repeat right now, a lot of realtors like to just talk about open houses and that sort of stuff, and market specific stuff. And what you guys were presenting to your client base yesterday, or your contact base, your sphere, was an opportunity for them to build wealth outside of the traditional structure of building wealth, right? And especially as a matter of setting up their children for success, not just financially, but for those children to have an understanding from an early age what life is like as a landlord, what life is like as a property investor. I think that that presentation and everybody that was contributing to it all had very positive things to add and positive kind of ideas as to the best way to kind of finance our children's educations, right? Because it is a very substantial expense. And, I want my children to take some level of student loans out so they have a contribution and an understanding of what it's like to pay for an education. But at the same time, like, let's be real about it. I have saved for their education, whether it was in a in the right way or not is it remains to be seen. But what we were talking about yesterday were kind of some wild card ideas as to how to potentially turn a profit
Mm.
uh, on this endeavor, and people don't usually talk about that. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
And if you want to know a little more about that, because what we were talking about was breaking it down from Jeevan's part of the conversation was purchasing a property with as little as somewhere in the range of 50,000 down. I mean, the numbers vary depending on the price of the house, and ultimately coming out the end of school with somewhere in the range of two, three, $400,000 in equity to be able to set your son or daughter up with heading into their life, or
Yeah,
have a house that they can just stay in if they decide to stay in the area that they're schooling
settle
or
in
with
that
their
area
course.
for
Yeah.
sure.
And so if you would like more information about that and you've just heard what we've had to say, please type in replay in the comments and we'll actually send you a link for the video recording. Now the link's going to take a few days to come out because they got to do some editing and make sure it looks good. because we got to look sexy and stuff on camera. And
And
so
those
there's
tacos
probably,
were on point.
yeah, the tacos were on point too. Yeah. So say type replay in the chat on Facebook here, and we'll send out links to whomever does that. Um, let's talk a little bit about today's market. Like, what is going on? So I've seen an increase in listings in the last 3 to 4 weeks in the area. Sales have stayed about the same month over month from January to February, in my opinion, based on what I've seen in the market, because I've done a couple of statistical breakdowns. We haven't seen like an increase in sales, but definitely an increase in listings, which means potentially, although we did have that storm in the last few days, with the warmer weather, we've seen a few listings come to market, maybe some spring market on the horizon here. But I think one of the bigger things to talk about is Trump's up and down with his tariffs and all these things, and how that's affecting what's going on in Canada, and how people are managing their money and using their money. What are you seeing in your world as far as some of the headlines out there?
Um, it's one word, and I hate to say it, but it's fear.
Mm,
Right? And it's fear, and it's fear of the unknown. Since 1989, when free trade had started for Canada, all they've talked about is expanding those agreements and building these worldwide efficiencies and networks. And now here we are in a protectionist environment where and let's look back, right? During COVID, remember how hard it was for Canada to get vaccines and PPE because these countries were all keeping it for themselves domestically.
mm,
And I think that what we're seeing right now is a realization that the borders of your country need to matter. And we've let the flow of goods come in so freely that our dependency on foreign markets has grown to a point where maybe it's gone too far. And that we need to kind of reshore some of our manufacturing and decide what our core basket of goods are to make sure they're produced in Canada, and that we have those sort of things to fall back on. So I'm not saying cancel free trade, but don't get me wrong, if they cancel it, I'm fine with it. Would it take some adjustment? Definitely. It would definitely take some adjustment. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's people watching here being like, look at this wacko saying cancel free trade. It's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is when you encounter protectionist environments, make sure you're protecting your own as well.
mm,
In Canada, things are yo-yoing with the threats from down south. And remember, we're a domestic market. Like, the percentage of our economy that is truly manufacturing based has fallen substantially since 1989. We depend on other nations to manufacture most of what we're buying. So, in that capacity, it's not that the tariffs would have some sort of crazy compound effect. Now, don't get me wrong, if factories all start to close, like that could be a real problem. But property values won't be our problems in those situations. Eating will be.
mm,
So, like realistically speaking, when you have this threat of tariffs, what it's really doing is putting buyers in a more advantageous position to be able to negotiate on real estate that they feel they can get better value on. I had mentioned to you even the power of sales. Canada currently has more mortgages in, like, 1 or 2 payment arrears than we have had in history. And we still haven't had a shock to the system in regards to employment.
mm,
People are just stretched,
mhm,
right? And some people made over purchased. But the one thing I'd like to touch on, and if there's any other mortgage agents that have been watching this, uh, that have participated in fraud, I just want to say, like, hey, yeah, it really is your fault. It really is your fault for not giving people prudent advice, not telling people to not overextend themselves, and to live within a budget. When you take somebody that qualifies for a $500,000 home and you help them purchase an 800K property, you're not Robin Hood. You are the devil. And you are the devil because you're shackling them with debt and you're putting them in a perpetual hell that they never get out of. And now these people are seeing situations where they could lose their homes. But the problem is that they never budgeted to be able to purchase that home in the first place because it was outside of their window of affordability. And even when I was doing this, in that market when we were talking and encountering customers, like, Justin, it's not even funny. I've told you myself the amount of realtors that will ask me what I do for people when there's not enough income, and I'm like, well, I tell them what they qualify for, and I suggest
Wink,
that they
wink,
purchase
nudge,
within those
nudge.
bounds. Well, there's no wink wink, right? Like, we're not helping
No,
people
they're wink,
achieve
winking.
wealth.
What are you doing for people when? No,
Oh
no.
yeah. Or like, hey, do you take care of the income? And I'm like, huh?
You
Like,
actually do have
no.
agents who ask you that, Jivan?
Karen, I can tell you that it's one of the biggest turnoffs of my business. And yes,
Oh,
outright, brash. Hey, what do you do about
Wow.
this? Acting like it's just a normal way of doing business. So if you take our run up from before, and let's assume that even 10% of those buyers were there fraudulently, and respectfully, that number's low.
Mhm.
Uh, but let's say 10% of them were, and you were one of the people being forced to overpay for your home, or go over asking because the person you were competing with actually didn't qualify to be at your price point. Could you imagine?
no.
Right? There's no need to imagine, because it happened to countless numbers of your customers. It happened to countless numbers of my customers, and we just never knew, right? And we never knew. And it's so crazy that I was actually speaking to somebody that used to work for a major insurer, and I said to that person, I said, and this person used to work in their sort of resolution department, meaning that if things have gone south for you and you had an insured mortgage, that they will help you extend your amortization or do whatever they can, maybe help you get a bit of a larger loan so you can add an auxiliary suite. Like, there's a lot of systematic things in place to make sure things don't go to power of sale on insured mortgages. And so my question to this individual is, hey, once you've discovered, because they do a much deeper dive on a file, audit wise, that, when things are going south. And my question is that once you've discovered that this mortgage was begotten by fraudulent means and things had been faked, do you call the loan or do you still try and fix it? Guess what the answer was?
They still try and fix it.
Yeah. They still try and fix it, because trying to fix it is cheaper than, an actual,
Calling the loan or
claim
And not
paying.
only that,
yeah,
there's no
yeah,
repercussions for the person that
exactly.
did the fraud in the
Yeah,
first place either.
yeah, yeah.
They don't go back
Right?
and say, "Wait a sec, there's fraudulent documents.
Yeah.
Let's fix that Let's plug that
Yeah.
leak first."
So there's
Wow.
so many of us that are legitimate mortgage brokers that have been begging for over a decade for income to be verified directly, either through Equifax and Revenue Canada,
Mhm.
or just through Revenue Canada directly. And the amount of pushback
Mm.
that there has been from the bureaucracy on allowing for that to actually take place
I thought there
will
was,
blow
Jivan.
your mind.
I
No,
thought there
Karen.
was because
No,
every time I
Karen.
got a mortgage, I had to bring forward my my
Notices of assessment, your
tax.
Yeah,
T1
but
memos.
those can be faked. That's the
That's the
point.
point. Is these people are faking those
They're
documents.
faking legal
What? Are
documents.
you kidding?
Listen, I tell
No,
you
Karen,
right
this is
now,
an
I don't want to
industry.
name names. I don't want to name names. I heard of a situation that happened last two
Wait a
years
minute, can you
ago.
fake mine?
For
I
the
heard
record,
of
it
it.
wasn't my name. Just
No,
for
no,
the
yeah.
record, it was not my name.
I don't know. I did, but I heard of a situation that happened 2 years ago where this gentleman worked for a company, and again, I want to keep it very vague because of who's involved in this. And the people that he got involved with when it came to the real estate agent, the mortgage broker, and the lawyer were all in cahoots to
Wow.
put together a situation where this guy was allowed to go from a $600,000 place in Burlington to a $1.34 million place somewhere else, and could not afford it. Could not afford it. And it was all fake. All the documents were faked. All the documents were faked.
What's the whole point of that? Because honestly speaking, they end up leaving the house anyway because
Well,
they
he ended up making
They
money
don't.
because
They don't.
it was in those very fast times, so he actually
Yeah.
worked out for him. But
oh okay.
there's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
people
yeah.
that it couldn't. It may not, right? You know what's weird about all this is I'm so gosh darn naive. I'm like, this is a thing. Like Karen's like, this is a thing. What? It's like I'm the loser in the corner that that never knew anything was going on, while all the cool kids were doing pot, were smoking pot or something. And I'm like, I didn't know. You know what I mean? I didn't know.
It
Well,
just
if you're
seems
19 plus, I hope they got it from Sparkle. But
It's legal
you
now,
know,
but back in my day, in our day.
but jokes aside,
so
no, and this is a real problem, and it remains a problem. And bank reps were notorious for it, and mortgage agents were notorious for it. I remember a mortgage agent telling me that his previous broker showed him how to change a T4 on his driveway. And I'm sitting here going, huh? And then he's
Wow.
like, so you hiring? And I'm like, no, no, not hiring. But it's I literally I've sat in, you go to conferences, you're having a couple drinks with the guys, and we've sat around these tables and we're like, are we the idiots? Like, are we the dumb ones that have stayed on the right side of the ledger here? And you know what? With what I see happening in the marketplace, thank God. Thank God I stayed on the right side of the ledger in this capacity, because the amount of guilt I would be carrying watching my customers lose their homes, whether they're walking away with money or not, is just not energy that I could carry. Like, it's just not
How
my
big of a
vibe.
ripple are we talking? Is this like market destruction, or is this, there is a
I don't know
problem,
about
but
destruction. Like, it's pocket based, and you can imagine where those pockets are. And I'm not going to get into slagging any cities or slagging any ethnicities or any of that stuff, right? But the thing is I used to think it was just an ethnic problem.
Mm,
It's not. It's not, right? Um,
mm.
it's not at all. It's a domestic problem. It's a national problem. It is something that, unfortunately, banks find it easier to just cut somebody off than to take them to court or help file criminal charges. The other thing is banks don't want their audit numbers kind of as a part of the news cycle, right?
Right.
So if this starts to come out, right, banks are keeping it quiet because it's like, oh, darn, we got duped. That's why we have loan loss provisions. It'll be a line item,
so bizarre.
right?
Um,
And it affects the market. It affected the market on the high side. Um, Anyways, yeah. So it's a very bright
so
and
on a
cheery day over here.
positive note, Jeevan, I always look at things very positively, right?
Sure.
And you addressed the fact that, that Canada and the US and how we're going to possibly suffer from not getting goods and services from the US because of the situations. So in on two aspects for food, we have in Canada the largest vertical growing company in the world. And it started, I think it started in 1999 or 2000. No, sorry, it started in 2021. And the interesting part about this is vertical growing produces huge amounts of vegetables and fruit and what have you, and is much safer because there's no pesticides. It's all greenhouse, and that company is growing like a weed, is no joke, no pun intended.
Nice pun.
Well,
But
that was a
but
good one. That
what
was
I'm
actually pretty
saying,
good. That's-
what I'm saying is that to me is showing us as Canadians that there are very innovative situations happening in Canada so that we don't have to rely on the US. And now, I went into Mary Lou's this morning to pick up some veggies, and all it says is Mexico, Mexico, which, do we believe that or not? But we just buy it
At
because,
the end of the day, I think each country has its own sort of
yeah,
zone of genius for what they produce and what they have.
yeah,
And I think we've gotten complacent in Canada for relying on a certain number of things from the US and China and a few other places, which is fine. And that's okay in a lot of ways, because China and other places like that are the only places you can get certain things at that cost.
yeah,
You just can't replace
sure,
certain goods and services at the
for
same
sure.
cost,
But
which
as this comes about, as all these issues come about, Canada will become a little more self-sufficient, and the prices will come down. They'll probably be much higher at the very beginning, but they will come down eventually. And I look at that positively in regard to real estate also, it will adjust and it will adjust because we don't get a lot of American buyers. We don't. I mean, I have,
Not right now, not with the
in
exchange.
the
It's not
40
happening.
years that I've done business,
Yeah.
I can count on my hand how many American buyers I've had, right? And so realistically, and even transfers, from different big corporations. That happened in the 80s and 90s a lot because corporations would transfer people up here from the corporation, pay for everything and what have you. So I think it's very interesting how the fear should just dissipate and think of the positive and how can we resolve this? How can we resolve this? How can we resolve, getting people into housing that is affordable to them? And so this is my theory. So,
I think the housing issue will not go away. I think there's still a large amount of legal immigration that's happening that will continue to bolster the real estate market across the board
yeah.
in Canada. I feel like, and I think that I mean we have a housing crisis as it sits. We don't have enough houses for the amount of people that are living here anyway. So we need to do something about that and continue to grow.
How come there's so many empty houses, Jeevan?
It's yeah.
How come there's
Um,
so many vacant houses? Because I got to tell you something. I'm so sick and tired of hearing we have a housing crisis, and yet, bingo, do you know how many vacant houses there are out there?
I
Holy,
believe it.
Lots,
I
lots.
believe it. But a lot of those are, very often we try and understand this on the micro when it's a macro problem, right? So, you had plenty of people that were investing. You have companies like BlackRock that made major purchases in real estate and started to buy up a lot of things. I think that you'll find that corporate purchasers, if anything, will increase in the upcoming, window of opportunity that they might see. I think that, and as a nation, we should really kind of be worried about that because it means that the corporations see the opportunity and our people don't.
oh,
Now,
absolutely.
right? And if it's a situation where, and I've said to people, as long and you and I have had this conversation. I know you and Justin and I have as well. And I think you guys might have even been the ones to say it to me. As long as you're buying and selling in the same market, it doesn't matter,
And
right?
we have, and I read the riot act to Justin this morning about selling houses and because, don't go in with an offer not that's firm, because if you go in with an offer that's firm and you don't know what the market's going to do, because the market is coming down. I don't care what anybody says, the market's coming down. And it there have seen this before, that houses have been sitting on the market for days and days and days and even months, even a year, you know,
But
and
this all comes down to education, I maintain,
yeah,
right? So like
yeah,
the reality is the more you educate the people you're working with, the
yeah.
more the understanding they have going in. You know, the typical real estate agent will walk into a house and go, "Your house is worth this. I can get you this."
Ugh.
I've lost listings to other teams and other people because they've told them a higher number, right? Or another number that's better. And it's like, I'm sorry, but we don't have a crystal ball to be able to tell. We give you an estimation, our best, you know,
Evaluation.
valuation based on our research and the things that we understand about the marketplace. And we try to be realistic and understanding about the different factors in the marketplace that we've been dealing with, Karen for almost 50 years and myself for 20 years, right? That's our job, right?
Do you
And
guys ever
then
feel like calling them after and being like, "Told you
oh,
so"?
dude, there was one that sold for that listed it at 1.6 and I told them 1.4 and 4 months later, the reason why they went with the other person when I spoke to them after, she said, "Oh, they brought me a nice leather folio." So I was going to send them one of our little leather booklets that we have, little journals with a note in the beginning in the front of it that said "told you so" or something. But
With a pen,
yeah, it
Justin.
sold for the price that I told them, but
So,
four
so
months later.
if you have a client, okay, and you're doing an evaluation, would you not do a title search, Jeevan, on the house before you went into that evaluation and see how much of a mortgage they have in this day and age, in this day of age of real estate? Because I got to tell you, there's more people with $1 million mortgages sitting on their houses than you can ever imagine.
Mm.
Am I right, or
This
am
is true. No, you're right. And it's funny because I get calls from people, and it's actually not funny at all. But I get, I'm having conversations with people now that have gotten a slight devaluation in their property value. We're looking to consolidate their debt, and now they can't consolidate their debt because their mortgage was already too big to begin with.
Mm.
And and the thing is like much like you're talking about, Justin, even when I'm talking to customers and I'm like, we can qualify you for X. And they say, well, this calculator said I could qualify for Y, or why are you using an interest rate of 4.5% when I see the lowest rate out there is 3.99?
Yay,
And it's
Zillow.
like the smoke and mirrors cup game that,
Yeah.
other companies are playing with people to, somebody's like, what's your best rate? And they go, oh, my best rate. So my best rate today is 3.89. Doesn't mean you qualify for it.
Mhm.
But and it's like that same situation of, somebody that's not pre-qualified calling you guys and telling you that they want to see $1.2 million houses. And then we do the math and they qualify for 750 grand.
Mm.
And now what's left of the house hunting process for these people?
Mm.
They've been, they've set their mind on a property value that's substantially higher than what they can afford.
bigger house, a
So
better
yeah,
location, everything.
and all
And then
those
you
things.
take
And
them
then
to
they're,
this little, then you take them to this little hut and they'll go,
yeah,
what, what, we,
yeah, where's the pool? Right. Uh, so,
double car garage.
right? That's but that's the challenge, right? And the thing is that even 100 grand doesn't take you as far as it used to. A
Mm-mm.
100 grand used to be a very substantial income. It was one of those benchmarks. I remember, staring at that number and being like, yeah,
Same,
one of these days.
same.
And now, um, and now it's not enough,
I
right? Like
used
a
to tell
hundred grand's
people when I
qualifying you
started,
for 460.
yeah, I used to tell people when I started 20 odd years ago, I used to tell people like, oh, it's hard to get a detached house in Burlington under $300,000. That was
Yeah.
only 20 years ago. That's not that long ago.
So
Yeah.
how I can compare this to is I remember when things used to cost $20, $20, $20, $20 was just always in your face, right? Now it's not $20, it's more like $500. And
Mm.
Yeah.
every time you turn around, you look at the bills that you pay and it's 500, 500, 500, or even a thousand, right? And
It's
it's,
250 for a pair of running shoes,
Oh, it's crazy.
yeah.
You're
right?
right.
And of course you can make choices and there's, Skechers out there that you can buy for 89.99.
Yeah,
But for
yeah.
what your kids want to wear, $250,
right.
right?
I go to,
And
please.
it's $100 for a sweater. Anyways, I don't want to I don't want to sound like somebody, yelling at the sky, but
No, I agree. I agree, Jeevan. It's become very expensive to live
yeah,
and food, clothing, anything that you touch now, gas. I mean,
yeah,
but one thing I don't understand about the gas, but one day somebody will explain it to me. I drive up to Waterdown and I can get it for $1.45. I come down here and it's $1.56. So explain that one to me.
Ugh,
Anyway,
smart people.
so, but as far as mortgages are concerned, I
for
think,
sure.
and I want to talk to you about one thing because I don't understand this. So claim the GST and HST new housing rebate. So in other words, if you go in and buy a new house, and I know that the rebate would usually go back to the builder. But now they're talking about that the buyer can actually get the rebate, right?
That's only after you've paid it though.
Okay.
That's the only way to get it, is that you pay the HST or the GST
Oh,
at
I
the,
see. So the builder
yeah.
used to pay
So
the,
like, remember
right.
that rain condo of mine you sold, Justin?
Yes. In
Uh,
Oakville there?
in Oakville, yeah. So when I bought that one, because I had advertised it for rent, originally the plan was to live in it, but then by the time it got here, we had two kids because it was about 5 years late in construction. But that's a different conversation. Um, but when I bought that one, I had leased it out, and then therefore I had to pay the HST, and then I had to complete a process to get it back by showing them it had been leased for a year. And then the most you can get back in that situation is $24,000. I don't know if that's changed, but back then the cap was 24K for the cap on the
It
rebate.
doesn't say any cap on it because this,
No, so I'm pretty sure it's 24K
this is,
is the cap of what the actual rebate itself is. So that being said, so that's how that works though, Karen, is that so it's paid
okay.
through the builder and then you claim it back.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
It happens to, and we try and clarify this for people as well when they're purchasing new construction, and and they've decided to lease it out. That this is something that you got to be conscious of, and this is money that you'll need at closing. And it's usually the builder doing their own investigations, because the last thing the builder wants is to give you the rebate and then they don't get the money on the back end.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because it's a line item for them.
Yeah.
So it's like even with that condo at Appleby in Dundas that I picked up on assignment, I actually got a letter from the CRA about a year and a bit after closing that said, "Oh, hey, just to let you know, you're kosher on your HST rebate." And then, so once I received that, I put it up for lease because
Oh,
because
great.
I had been occupying the property. I
Yeah.
used it for more than a year in an owner occupied scenario, but it was one of those things where I was like, okay, we're clear on that. And one of the main reasons I did it was because I didn't have the money to pay the HST up front and to try and claim it back after the fact. It
Yeah.
was a lot easier for me to just occupy it for a year. And we did, you've been there, Justin. We did really occupy it, just for the tax man that's listening.
Yep.
And and it made sense to do it that way. Now that's not a normal way for people to be able to do things, and they budget for their deposits, but they don't budget for HST in that situation. Or they've made their deposits and now their new construction is complete, and here's another can of worms, and your property is not worth what you paid for it because you bought it at the height of the market in 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Right.
know. Yeah.
And you've got a $200K deposit on a $1.4 million purchase, and it's now worth 1.2. And you think you've got 200K down, but at that point you have zero down because you got to make up that difference yourself.
Mhm.
The lender's not going to make it up for you.
We're running a
So
different,
much so,
so
so much so that there's literally lender relationships in these condo projects, and their biggest selling point. You want to hear the biggest selling point? Is that they'll go off the value that you paid. That's the biggest selling point. Deal with this lender because they'll go off the value that you paid. And that lender, a major bank, has made the decision that they're comfortable with the project and that they will
Wow.
increase their exposure
oh,
there.
so
And
just
So irrelevant of what the current value is, which is it could have dropped by 20%
correct.
or
they
10%.
have, which they
They'll-
have because of the gazillion apartments that are now up
But
for.
that's not local to Toronto. That's Burlington's having that same problem. There's a lot of things going on. The
Oakville-
reason why that
Oakville's done it
happened,
a couple times.
well,
Absolutely.
let's just point out the reason why that happened was because builders had to increase their sale prices over time because financing costs for their builds increased over time. And
Bro.
so the first people in the project might have paid 300,000 for their 2-bedroom unit or 1-bedroom unit. The last people into the project paid 700,000, and there's a massive discrepancy of who owns what. And when the 300,000 guy lists for 400,000 and the guy that paid 7 is like, "What the hell, man? What am I supposed to do here?" You
So I
know?
have-
Well, and then it's just like that project across from Michael's, across from
Right.
Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Right? Those beautiful townhomes, three floors, elevator, rooftop patio.
Yeah.
First time the sign went up, it was starting at $899.
Yeah.
Remember, I told you I wanted one.
I know. You
And
should
by
have
the
bought
time
one.
they went live, yeah, no. Thank God I didn't.
I know.
And karma's quite a thing, and we can talk about
Mhm.
that another time about the customer that did.
Yeah.
But in even looking at that project, by the time it went live, they were starting at 1.2.
Mhm.
And this was in the time, you have your project sign up, you have some fairly standard costs. And it's funny because it's like, even when you talk to some customers, and again, I use funny because it's ironic, not because it's
Yes.
actually comical.
Yes.
But you speak to people in those situations now, and they're like, well, the builder should have to do something. And it's like, well, you didn't ask the builder to do anything when you made 300 grand in a year waiting, for this home to be built, or the last time you did this. I encountered a lady that had, made a couple $100,000 on one project and then took that money and went and bought 2 houses in Paris, Ontario,
Ooh, bad move.
thinking that, new construction again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I go to the lady because she's like, "Oh, I really need financing for it." And I go to her, I'm like, respectfully, I'm like, your builder would have required confirmation that you're eligible for the mortgage associated with this real estate, because they need that to prove to their lender
Yeah,
that this
yeah,
will
exactly.
close.
Exactly.
Therefore, that's how they get their finance, which is why you're always trying to get through, like, that 40-50% sell through so you can get the project started.
Yes.
And her comment to me was, "Well, yeah, that got taken care of." And I'm like, "Well,
Back full circle.
what did they achieve?" Right? What did they achieve? And now you're talking about the 200, $400,000 that you have, that was your retirement plan, that you thought you were going to turn into 800K, and now it's gone.
I want
And
to, yeah, and that's happening more and more.
yeah,
Because people are complaining about the fact that they have to come up with a differential. Justin and I ran into it with one of my clients who
yeah,
has an investment property in Toronto, and they've got to close in April, or it's happening in April. And we did the numbers, and the numbers were 200,000 lower of what they paid for it. But however, so now you mentioned something about the lender. So the lender will take over at the price they paid. I just want to qualify this. So to clarify this, so the
on
lender,
certain projects.
yeah, so
Certain
the lender takes over the unit, right? And he will just take over the unit. Is that what and no,
No, no, no. So
no.
what I was talking about
I
is
thought that was,
no. So what happens is that, so as a standard part of the, mortgage process, we require an appraisal, right? And
oops.
what we're saying is that, this lender on this particular project, and again, it's very isolated, but on that particular project, a certain major bank
Yeah.
has, and I can almost guarantee you it's the same major bank that provided the construction financing, because they're pooping bricks too, and they realize that they're underwater. So it's like, how do we get these deals to close?
Yeah.
Okay, we will take your contract value as the price. You hear about people overextending themselves in that situation. I had past clients of mine call me, family income of about $130,000, telling me that they bought a $1.2 million condo
Mhm.
in Mississauga, a penthouse unit, and that they had to close on it. And I was like, how? Like, do you have $700,000 down to be able to get the mortgage that you qualify for? And then again, same question. How did you qualify to the builder? Oh, the guy that sold it to me told me he'd get me the letter, and did. It's like, okay,
So now we
right?
come full circle.
Oh, it's,
And
yeah, because we started.
and then we also start understanding why some of these places burn down. And I'm not saying that
Right?
that's the route that you should
No,
take.
no, but again, it's desperation, right?
Yeah.
It's I'm stuck. I'm not gonna be able to close. And the thing is that, again, this was a situation where people saw the market on fire and thought the only way for me to get in is this. Therefore I must. But
Mm.
it's like, what are you chasing? What are you chasing? Right? Like, and it's always last money in that gets screwed. Guess what? 2021, 2022, you're screwed. Yeah.
Desperation, frenzy, everything, added together, and they just, oh, I want to buy, it's
I
like,
remember a guy calling me with a hole in the ground in Crown Point, spitting distance to Dofasco. And, he was telling me what he kind of owes on the property, and I knew he was underwater. By the time I got there, this guy told me he wanted 549 for a 2-bedroom shack in Crown Point. And I was like, I really wish you had saved me the gasoline of coming up here. I wish you all the best with your process. I remember a lady trying to sell me a semi in Mississauga, and it went from, a conversation around 800 grand. By the time I got there, it was $1 million with a hoarder in the basement.
Mm.
And she's like, well, I need somebody to take it as is. And I'm like, yeah, the what are the fascia and soffit are falling off your home, but you want $1 million. Oh, well, my daughter said I could probably get more. It's like, okay, great. I'm guessing your daughter is an industry expert, and and that's how you'll do it. So, at the end of the day, we can only do so much for people's expectations, and when they don't want to hear what's real, and they're looking for that person to kind of just reinforce what their thought process is. There's so many experts in the world right now. You can find somebody to make you right on anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you are. And
So that you hit the nail on the head. There's so many experts, and they want to hear what they want to hear.
yeah, for
And
sure.
you could be banging your head against the wall, and I
For
learned.
those people those people that'll tell you 1.6, and then 11 days later will tell you that you need to drop it to 1.5, and then you know
Yeah.
what, you'll sell it at 1.4.
Yeah. So
And
listen, we've gone over time, and only because the conversation is always so interesting when Jivan comes on, and when this
so
is
I do have something positive
okay.
to say though.
Okay,
I
let's
do
do it.
have something
Let's
positive to
let's
say.
hear what the positive spin on this is.
There is downwards pressure on interest rates.
Yes, we love
There
that.
is real downwards pressure on bond yields, and there is real downwards pressure on interest rates. Meaning that for what many of us were fearing, more than 1.2 million mortgages come up for renewal in Canada this year. Um, this was the payment shock period that a lot of people were fearful of. Those 2019, 2020 buyers that bought at 2% interest, 2.5% interest, that were coming into a market that was at 6%. Our lowest transfer rate today is 3.99 on 3 years fixed. For anybody that bought under $1 million and had CMHC insurance or has 35% in equity. So it's great to see rates starting with a 3 again. It does involve a buy down on my side, but at the end of the day, we're trying to help people the way we can while still taking care of ourselves. But the point is that rates are coming down, and much like we talked about very briefly last night, in times of uncertainty, there is definitely opportunity, and people need to be cognizant of that. And if they are in a position where they can afford it comfortably, they should definitely be looking to the market, because I don't know about you guys, I'm dumb like that. When most people are running from the fire, I'm running to it. So, I think there's a lot of opportunity out there in the multifamily space, in situations where these guys were buying zero down, 110% loan to value mortgages with a certain unscrupulous, whoever they might be, saying it's a good idea and how rich they're going to become because of it, and then watching that tower fall, with the amount of
I don't think
people
I would
that,
want to live up in Sudbury, though.
Oh,
oh,
easy.
you don't have to go
You don't
further
have to
than
go there.
Waterdown to find it.
Yeah,
But
no.
Well, so I've asked Justin if he wants to bring his family into a multi-dwelling with me. So we'll just buy that first one that we can
Yes,
jump on,
we'll be
okay?
fine with
there
it.
you go. That's
But I
a
don't.
You know what though?
little
But
duplex
there's something to be
action
I
said
for
for
want
one
that.
the
there.
top floor.
But there's something to be said for that. You know what I'm saying? And you got to
Absolutely.
look at there's some cultures that live in families like that together all the time.
Bro,
And they're
right
also
here.
there are some of the
My
richest people
first
on the
9 years of marriage, I stayed with my parents. I
that are
bought
some of
commercial
you,
real
and
estate
you are
instead of
one of the
residential.
wealthiest people I know, right?
Bro, I'm
And
broke.
we're all broke at different levels. So my point is that like this is the time to make those decisions in effective ways that allows us to become, again, take advice that from people that have your back. Don't take advice from people that are trying to make a buck. That's a good summary piece. Because everybody knows a realtor and a lawyer and a doctor and a mortgage broker nowadays. We've got some great people here that can help you, and we're happy to help. And one more thing that I just want to say before we go, I am as proud to be a Canadian as anybody on this planet and anybody in this country, quite frankly. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. And I believe that we just need to fix the things we need to fix and create a strong and healthy economy in this country, and we will be fine. And I think anybody that thinks otherwise is ludicrous, in my opinion. That's just me. I'm putting my political views out there, but that is what it is. And so, go vote, first of all, because today's voting day, and let's do what we got to do for Ontario. And then when the bigger vote comes, make sure you're at the polls to have your voice heard, because that's how we create change in this country. All this vitriol and hate and other BS that's been going on needs to stop. And we need to come together and be Canadian.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what color, creed, or race you're from. Be Canadian, because we are here for the short period of time we're here for, and then we got to move on and leave the rest to our kids. And I want to create a strong future for our kids. And I'm pretty sure Jeevan feels the same way. Well, not all of that, but about our kids, about
Absolutely.
creating a
Strong
strong
words.
future for your kids. So
No, I very much do agree with 99% of everything you just said. And, as
It's the
for Canadians
1%
watching this,
just stop with just let them be.
I'll tell them that off the record. But no, I wear the pride of our nation on my sleeve. I can tell you that I'm proud AF to be Canadian. The Canada that we're in right now, economically, I don't recognize.
Agreed.
The taxation of people that are trying to increase national productivity and help themselves, the taxation is prohibitory to really incenting that investment. If Canadians want to see national growth, then maybe we should stop worrying about a basics. I don't remember what they called it, like a basic minimum income for people, and talk to people about how they can elevate their position and use the tools and opportunities around them to really, establish a lifestyle and a standard of living based on their own merit and not on something that is handed to them by the government. I'm not saying there isn't situations where that's necessary. Of course, God bless those people. I hope their situation improves. But when you get people that are so used to being at home, that think it's possible to live off $2,500 to $3,000 a month and are comfortable in that existence, you are not going to increase productivity.
I
And
agree.
you know what? Canada doesn't have a people problem. It has a productivity problem. And until we correct that, until we incent innovation in this country, until we incent the reshoring of manufacturing, you know what? I talk crap about free trade a lot because in 1992, my dad lost his job because of free trade. And you know what? I don't know about, Justin, both of your parents are realtors. Both of my parents were factory workers. And the amount of people that were able to structure a life in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s on parents that worked in the factory. My neighbors across the street, one worked at Ford, the other worked at another factory. They were able to raise their children in Millcroft. Yeah, my new neighbors, one's a doctor, the other's a surgeon.
Yeah.
Sorry, one's a doctor, the other's a lawyer. And that's the sort of income and lifestyle you need to be able to buy on a block that two factory workers were able to buy on 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of where I see what's wrong with our country right now. And am I suggesting a massive reset in real estate prices? No, I'm not suggesting any of that. What I'm suggesting is that we allow Canadians an opportunity to lift themselves up and really start to improve their markets and improve their own situation by their own volition, and encourage companies to hire Canadians and to reshore all of these data centers and customer service centers that we've sent out. The government talks about incentives to do this and incentives to do that. How about you incentivize Canadian production and Canadian services and make it viable and possible for our corporations to do business in Canada with some of the smartest people in the world, some of the kindest people in the world. It's choking me up because it really pisses me off.
I literally was getting goosebumps, dude. Like this is the kind of stuff. I think I've said this before. We talk about this sitting at a dinner table, just had chatting and lunch and stuff. And this is the stuff that burns me and makes me feel great about our country. And and I listened to you talk, and I know you made a run for it before, but
oh, bro, yeah,
no, not again, not again.
No, it's not that it's not again. It's not that it's never again, but it's what's the use?
Yeah, I get it.
Right?
Yeah.
People
So
only want the yes man
Sanghera for
that,
prime minister is what I was going to say, but whatever. It is what it is. Doesn't matter.
No,
So
bro,
I
I'm
wanted
telling you,
to,
like,
I wanted to put a Canadian flag up on the screen because, there are things that you can do here. And I hate to tell you, but this is an American company and they don't have a Canadian flag.
Oh no. Never mind.
well,
All
at least we
right,
still have one
folks.
for now.
We've done
So-
like 45 minutes or an hour, maybe. We got to get off this call,
Okay.
and everyone
Sure.
needs to get back to work and create more productivity.
All
So,
right, guys.
thanks, Jeevan, again. We appreciate
Yeah.
you, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Thanks.
Yeah, apologies for getting emotional here at the end, but
It's all good.
this
It's all
country
good.
matters.
It's what makes us all. It's what makes us all human, bro, and that's what
Human.
makes it. That
We're
makes you
human.
great.
Bro, I've seen more tents
Mm.
for people that aren't camping
I agree.
than I've ever seen in my life.
And that's not
And
okay.
it's not even close.
No.
So, anyways, I'm crying on television. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.